So let's start recording. I'll share the screen. Now we're in our second class of week 5. Last class, so yesterday we did an introduction to the US, which remember we also sometimes call the United States or the States or America. Yes, theoretically, you have North America, Central America, South America. They all have the word America in them, but somehow when people say, I'm going to America, they usually mean the USA. So United States, the States, it's all the same place. And so today we're going to start looking at different sections of that country because it's really big. And lots of Canadians travel there because it's really close, nice and easy to get to. So we will go to New England today. And New England on our map is in the top right. But when we're talking about maps, we never say top or bottom or left or right. We will use directions. So we won't say top right, we'll say northeast. So let's zoom in just to that area in the circle. So it's a pretty small area of the country. And this is known as New England. This area of the US is known as New England. And there are 6 states in New England. You have Maine, which is really big. Well, for New England. It's the biggest state in New England, but it's not the biggest state in the country. But you can remember the name because it's the main one. It's the biggest one in New England. It's the main one. Then you have New Hampshire and Vermont. Those are right beside each other. Vermont, see, I have tricks, ways to help you remember things. It works for me. If it doesn't work for you, you can try something different. But Vermont, to me, it looks like a V, kind of. We need to kind of use our imaginations, but it looks to me like a V. So you've got Vermont with a V. Beside that, you have New Hampshire. It looks like New Hampshire, but it's pronounced shire, New Hampshire. And that one I remember, this is a big stretch, so it might not make sense to you, but in Lord of the Rings, there's a little village called the Shire, and there's a wizard there with a hat that looks like this. So to me, it looks like a wizard hat from the Shire. So that's New Hampshire, but it's not pronounced Shire. You say New Hampshire. Vermont, New Hampshire. Then you have Massachusetts, which is the most populated state in New England. You have Connecticut down here, and then you have Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the whole country. It's the smallest state in the US, and it's not an island. So that's the introduction to New England. We have 6 states in New England. Maine is the biggest, and it's actually bigger than the other 5 combined together. So we'll look at the different states of New England today, but first, a quick video to introduce the area.
Come to New England to mount spectacular summits and to feel the ocean breeze. Come to tantalize your taste buds with succulent seafood and sweet maple syrup. Come for history and high culture. The history of New England is the history of America. It's the Pilgrims who came ashore at Plymouth Rock and the Minutemen who fought for American independence. The region undulates with the rolling hills and rocky peaks of the ancient Appalachian Mountains, from the beautiful birch-covered Berkshires in western Massachusetts to the lush green mountains in Vermont and the towering White Mountains that stretch across New Hampshire and Maine. The Appalachian Trail runs more than 2,100 miles from Georgia to Maine, passing through 14 states along the way. If anyone is counting, 730 of those miles in 5 of those states are in New England. New England is crowded with colleges and overrun with universities, making for a dynamic, diverse student scene. Hundreds of institutions of higher education are located in Boston and across the river in Cambridge, and Providence and New Haven are home to their own Ivy League institutions. The best introduction to revolutionary Boston is the Freedom Trail. This red brick path winds its way past 16 sites that earned the town its status as the cradle of liberty. Miles of rocky coastline and even more miles of hiking and cycling trails make this Wonderland Maine's most popular destination, and deservedly so. The White Mountains are New England's ultimate destination for outdoor adventure and inspiring landscapes, with 1,200 miles of hiking trails and 48 peaks over 4,000 feet. It's a destination for all seasons, with opportunities for hiking and cycling, skiing and snowboarding, sitting fireside and sitting lakeside. High season runs May through October. Spring brings less demand for accommodations. Travel costs in New England can range from less than $100 a day if you enjoy camping and self-catering, to over $200 a day for a high-end hotel and the region's finest restaurants. Traveling by car is the most convenient option for seeing rural New England. Regional bus lines connect bigger towns throughout the region. New England's history is rich, to be sure, but the here and now is downright exhilarating. With delicious seafood, incredible landscapes, and thriving culture, New England is packed with iconic experiences.
Okay, so here we are in New England. And to get started, we will go, well, not quite yet. A little bit more introduction of New England, the area. So it's very old. I mean, it's all, in terms of settlers, it's very old. So in the colonial period, that's when things were being colonized. So countries from Europe would come over into North America and South America and create colonies. That's why it's called the colonial period. And so this is a while ago, in 1616. This guy, John Smith, came over and he named the region New England. That's why it's called New England. It's the oldest part of the country in terms of settlements. And this is where the Revolutionary War started. So that's the war where they said, we don't want to be part of Britain anymore. We'll become our own country, and that's where that started. And today, it's known for the history, of course, because it's so old, but it's also known for its Atlantic coastline, the beautiful colors that you see in the picture, and forested mountains. And we spoke about the Appalachian Mountains last time, and we'll talk about them again this time, actually. So first, let's go to Massachusetts. So Massachusetts is the most populated state in New England. Out of those 6 states, it's got the most people and the most populated city. And if you look at a map, now you can see it more clearly that we've zoomed in. But this little stick, I guess you could call it a crooked peninsula, is called Cape Cod. And to me, it kind of makes it look like the country wants to fight, like the states that are doing that wants to fight. This is Massachusetts. It is the 7th smallest state in the US, even though it is the most populated in New England. Capital city is Boston, and you can see that is here where the star is. And a few places that tourists might want to go is Cape Cod, and that's our peninsula here with Provincetown right at the tip. So we'll see Boston today. We're going to go up to Salem. We'll take a look at Cape Cod, and just across the river from Boston, we'll look at Cambridge as well. And specifically in Cape Cod, you have Provincetown. Provincetown is one of the more popular places to visit when you go on to Cape Cod. So let's go over to Boston first. This city is a city of firsts. A lot of the first things happened there. So the first public library in the United States was in Boston. The first public park in the United States was in Boston. And also in Boston, you have something called the Freedom Trail. And this is an example of something you want to highlight. You'll put a star, write down, big star, big highlight, Freedom Trail, Boston, and then we'll look at more of that, but something to remember. So the Freedom Trail, it's 4 kilometers long, and it goes through downtown Boston, and it goes to different important sites, different things that tourists might find interesting. And again, Boston itself is the most populated city in New England. So you have the most populated city in Boston, which is in the most populated state in New England. Now, it's not the most populated state in the country, just in this area. And here you have the Freedom Trail. So this goes all through downtown, and over on the map on the left side, you can see where and all of the different sites it brings you to. So this goes all the way through the city center, across the bridge. And it looks like this over on the right. Their sidewalks are made out of brick in the city center, in the historic area. And you can follow this brick trail the whole time and go along the Freedom Trail. So over here in the map, you see this big building called Faneuil House. That is part of here, the Faneuil Hall Marketplace. It's in the same area. And this is a little market that has a bunch of stores, artisan stalls, little crafts and handmade things you can buy. There's restaurants, you can sit outside, sit inside and eat. There's also pubs, so you can also drink if you'd like. And that all happens here. This is located on the Freedom Trail. And it's made out of 3 buildings. The writing is quite small, but the building here on the left is the North Market, and the building over there is the South Market. So it's made out of 3 old granite buildings. And there's indoor, outdoor dining, and it's old. I mean, for Canada, it's old. Excuse me, for the United States. In this area of the world, we don't have really old buildings, but 1742 is very old for us in North America. Remodeled in 1805. So for Boston, really, that's all we need to know. That's all we need to talk about is the Freedom Trail and the places that it goes. One of them is Faneuil Hall Marketplace. Now we're going to go past Cambridge for a moment, further north up to Salem, Massachusetts. And now Salem, historically, maybe you know the word already, the name, I mean, of the city already. Salem was where they had the witchcraft trials. So in the late 1600s, between 1692 and 1693, there was some kind of hysteria, like people in a way kind of went crazy and accused people of being witches. And those people who were witches, they put them on trial, and some of them were found guilty of witchcraft, and then they were killed because they were witches. Let me get rid of this for now. Famous for the witch trials, it says. And so over 200 people were accused of witchcraft and 30 were found guilty. So, I mean, it doesn't matter if they were pagans or whatever they might have been. Of course, they didn't deserve to die. But late 1600s, that's the way people thought. And so 19 people were executed in public by hanging. One person who was a man, it wasn't always women either. One man was pressed to death, like squished, and at least 5 people died in jail. So it is kind of, in a way, it's become a tourist attraction. And this, I think I've mentioned it before, falls under the category of dark tourism. So in tourism, you have different target markets. And so you have the general population, which is everyone. Inside of that population, you have target markets. Maybe people who like adventure travel, people who like religious travel. One of them is dark tourism. They want to visit a place like Salem, a place where people were killed because they were considered witches. That's dark tourism. So it is a tourist attraction. People do go to Salem. And now, of course, these days, we're a lot more tolerant to what people might believe. And so Salem also attracts people who are into things like paganism and Wiccan people. So sure, if that makes you happy, it's fine. You don't get killed anymore. So, but they did at that time. And that's why people visit Salem. So now we're back near Boston. You've got Boston here, and just next door is a town called Cambridge that is host to this very famous university that you might not recognize just to see it, but this is Harvard University. It's the oldest university in the United States, established in 1636. And it's actually one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Meaning it's very difficult to get into. If you say, I went to Harvard, it's very impressive. Our new associate dean at Mohawk College for this program actually went to Harvard. So we have, or worked there, maybe. Either way, it's very impressive. So we're very lucky to have her on board. So that's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just pretty close to Boston. That's where you'll find Harvard. Okay, now let's go to the Angry Peninsula, the one that looks like it's trying to fight somebody. That is called Cape Cod, and Cape Cod is the whole peninsula, the whole part of it. It's actually connected to the mainland by two bridges, and you can see one here, otherwise it's separated by water. It's home to Cape Cod National Seashore that has 48 kilometers of Atlantic beach. And right up at the top, where you see it's being circled Provincetown, that is known for beaches, harbor artists, tourism, of course, that's why we're studying it, and it's a popular destination for LGBTQ plus travelers. So each of these states is kind of small, so we will get through them pretty quickly. So that said, we are now leaving from Massachusetts, and let's go over to New Hampshire. Capital city is Concord. You can see that on the map where the star is. And remember the way I mean, you can come up with your own tricks if they work for you, if mine don't. But if mine do work for you, then New Hampshire, I remember it looks like a wizard's hat. And the wizard lives in the Shire in the Lord of the Rings movie or book. Ridiculous, I know, but sometimes it helps people remember. So here's New Hampshire. You can see that the White Mountain National Forest, there's the White Mountains here. It's actually part of the larger mountain chain called the Appalachian Mountains. And yesterday in class, I told you that the Appalachians are really big. They go, I said yesterday, I thought they went to Tennessee. They even go further than that. They go down to Alabama. So they start in Alabama and they go way up and they end in Newfoundland. So it's really big. So to make it easier to study, we break it down into little sections. Yesterday we saw, briefly, we mentioned the Blue Ridge Mountains. But today, part of those Appalachian Mountains are the White Mountains. And this is even more ridiculous how I remember it. Remember the wizard with the hat? Well, he has long white hair. So that's how I remember the White Mountains are in New Hampshire. It all comes back to that one wizard. And believe it or not, I just watched that movie for the first time in my life about 2 weeks ago. So you don't have to watch the movie to help remember. So New Hampshire, the White Mountains, and that's important because one of the other states has a different set of mountains called something else, but we'll get there. So the White Mountain National Forest is within the Appalachian Mountains, and it's known for Mount Washington. That's the region's highest peak. And wildlife, you'll see black bears, you'll see moose, and lots of winter sports there, so you can go skiing and snowboarding and so on. But more about the Appalachian Mountains. Usually people just say the Appalachians. They'll usually drop the mountains, kind of like when we talk about the Rocky Mountains. You can just say the Rockies. People will know what you mean by that. So they are quite big. You can see on the map now going from Alabama all the way into Canada. They were as high as the Rocky Mountains at one point, but they're very, very, very old. So they've eroded. They've experienced erosion from wind and rain and snow and other weather like that. And they go from Alabama in the Southwest and all the way over to Newfoundland. So like I said, we divide them into smaller areas to be able to study them. And here you can see the different areas. So you've got the Great Smoky Mountains. That was the national park we looked at yesterday. All the way up, there's Blue Ridge Mountains. And then here we have the two mountains that we're talking about in New England. New Hampshire has the White Mountains. Remember the wizard with the white hair and the hat. Next door in Vermont, we have the Green Mountains. So that's a bit tricky, and you'll need to remember the difference between those two. New Hampshire has White Mountains. That's the name of them, not the color specifically. But the White Mountains is the name, and Vermont has the Green Mountains. So looking at the White Mountains, we're back in New Hampshire. I just wanted to talk about the Appalachians for a moment. So they cover about a quarter of the state of New Hampshire. And here you can see the ski hills that people enjoy in the winter. And of course, in the summer, you've got beautiful hikes and you can go kayaking and canoeing and stuff. And you can even drive. That's quite a common way to get around the Americas, is to drive, go on nice long drives. So here you can see that tourists enjoy hiking trails, ski resorts, and something interesting is that there's no tax, no sales tax in New Hampshire. So tourists like to go there to go shopping and get some things a little bit cheaper than they might get at home. So we were in New Hampshire on the right of the screen, but since we're looking at a map, I'll call it east. Now we'll go west into Vermont. And here you have the Green Mountains. So again, something that you need to remember. So write that down. New Hampshire, White Mountains. Vermont, Green Mountains. Again, I have these tricks. Maybe they work for you, maybe they don't. But the way I remember that the Green Mountains are in Vermont is that VER is almost how you spell or how you say green in French. Might be difficult for those of you who don't know French, but if you do, and if that helps, Ver, Green, Vermont. So the Green Mountains are in Vermont, White Mountains are in New Hampshire. So the capital is Montpelier. And Vermont is known for being mostly forest covered, and they have old covered bridges. There's over 100 of them, 100 of the 19th century covered wooden bridges. And fun fact is that Vermont is the largest producer of maple syrup in the States, which makes sense if they're so forest covered. And this is where the Green Mountains are. And then you'll see in the northwest part of the state, Lake Champlain actually sticks into Canada a little bit, but it forms a natural border. And we've talked about natural borders in the past. Here you can see straight borders that might be based on lines of latitude and longitude. But here, Lake Champlain, you've got a natural border between the state of New York and Vermont. And then part of that same lake goes into Canada a little bit. A different map of the state of Vermont shows us a trail. This is called the Long Trail, and long it is. It is 438 kilometers long, and it goes all the way from north to south. And you can see in miles how long that is. Remember, I mentioned yesterday that in the United States, they use miles and Fahrenheit and feet and inches. So that's why you'll see the word mile when you look at American maps. Okay, Massachusetts is underneath it, or to the south. Canada's to the north, of course. And this is the oldest long distance trail in the US, constructed between 1910 and 1930. So Vermont, Green Mountains, New Hampshire, White Mountains. Where else have we been? Massachusetts, most populated state in New England. And let's move on to Maine. And the way I remember it is within New England, it's the biggest state. It's the main one. Of course, that's probably not where the name came from, but that's how I remember it. You see the Appalachian Mountains continuing over northeast and extending into Canada. Capital is Augusta. It is, like I said earlier, as large as the other 5 states combined within New England. So you have 6 states in total, and Maine, you can, in terms of area, you can fit all of the other states inside of Maine if you wanted to. It's got over 8,800 kilometers of coastline, plus 3,000 coastal islands, and you can see them dotting the shore here. It's actually also home to New England's only national park. Remember yesterday we saw that map and how many national parks are across this whole huge country. There's only one in all of New England, and it's in Maine. And if you've got sharp eyes, you can see it on the map, otherwise it's being circled now. Acadia National Park. That is in Maine. It's the only national park in New England. Located mainly on Mount Desert Island, and is known for wildlife, moose, bears, and because it's on the coast, you can see whales and seabirds as well. And this is also where you'll find something called Thunder Hole, which is famous for 2 different things. Well, it's created the same way. So as water comes in from the ocean, it kind of goes into this very narrow, I guess, cavity, kind of the rocks come together and the water rushes in and claps in a small cave, and it sounds like thunder. And the other thing is that when there's a lot of water, you can get waves that are really high that splash up. So here's a few different examples of that. So first you've got the small inlet, which is now hidden by a play button, thanks to YouTube, but we'll watch the video and you'll be able to see what I mean. So the water comes in there and goes smash and makes a big sound like thunder. And this is the same place in the bottom video that you see. And that is how big these waves can get. So of course, at that time, you're not allowed down on the stairs for your safety. So first, this is the sound of the thunder. Of course, you might need to use your imagination. So you have to use your imagination. And of course, when you're there, it's much louder and more impressive. But maybe the person in that video was not as excitable as the person in the next video. You'll hear them saying, wow, wow. But this is the same place when there's high tide, there's high winds and everything else. You'll see that the waves can reach up to 12 meters high. So you get the idea there. And that's clearly a little bit more impressive visually, so people are more excited to see that. But that's something that brings people to Acadia National Park. as tourists. And because it's right on the water, Acadia National Park, you have some wildlife to see out in the water as well, like seabirds and whales. So puffins are the other birds that you see in that picture. You can also see them in Newfoundland and other places along the Atlantic coast. And whale watching tours are really popular as well. So this is all part of Acadia National Park. Bar Harbor is part of Acadia National Park. Moving on, we'll go to Rhode Island. Now, Rhode Island is the smallest island in the smallest state in the United States, but it's not an island. Capital is Providence. Like I said, it's the smallest state in the US, and you've got Block Island that we'll visit, and we'll also visit Newport. So let's go to Newport first. And this is where, I mean, we've talked about this before. Different tourists like different things. People find different things interesting. So some people like to go to Newport to visit something called the Breakers, which is a mansion. And here's some pictures of the outside and the inside. This was built in the late 1800s as a summer residence. So this was like their cottage. This wasn't even their main house. But for the Vanderbilt family, which is a very famous, very rich American family. And so people like to go there. It's visited by almost 500,000 people every year. If you think back to our map, we also had Block Island circled. So people like to visit Block Island. It's not too far from mainland Rhode Island. This is actually an island, Block Island. And of course, you can see part of these in the picture. Reasons why people and tourists like to visit. They like to visit the beaches, cliffs. They can go hiking and cycling, or just relax with food and drink and admire the view. And like I said, not too far away, 14 kilometers away from mainland Rhode Island, and it can be reached by ferry. Okay, we're really speeding through here, but as long as I'm not going too quickly, you can always tell me in the chat. And reminder that you can turn on your microphones. If there was 100 people, I'd say maybe not, but you can always interrupt me if I'm going too quickly. Connecticut, another state that is not pronounced the way it looks like it should be pronounced. You don't really say this C, Connecticut, Connecticut. So here we are in Connecticut. It is well, let's take a look. It's the furthest south of New England states. It's the third smallest state in the whole country. Capital city is Hartford. And Connecticut is known to have Yale University, which is also a very prestigious university. You have Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then you have Yale in Connecticut. And just like the rest of New England, the state of Connecticut is quite well known for the fall colors, the autumn colors. So let's go over to our slide about Yale. This is the third oldest university in the United States and also quite prestigious, and it's located in New Haven, Connecticut. Okay, so like I said, that went really, really quickly. So some of our lessons will end early, some of them will end a bit later. Well, not late, they'll just end when we're supposed to. Same with when we're on campus. So sometimes we'll leave a bit early, sometimes we'll use the whole hour and a half. But today, that's it for New England. Not a whole lot to talk about. So what should you do before our next class? There will be map work on Canvas, and maybe I'll show you some of that now because somebody had a question about it. And usually, if one person has a question, other people have the same question, but they just don't want to ask. So there's map work, there's an activity to do, and remember to start studying your maps, your locations, state names, of course, capitals. And we're back to our destination quizzes. Remember that there are, I think, 6 or 7 destination quizzes, and they're not worth very much. In total, at the end of everything, they're worth 10%. So each quiz is worth maybe 1.1 or 1.2% at the end of your course. But every time we learn a new area, you'll have a destination quiz. So the destination quiz will be next week at the beginning of class number 1, which means next Wednesday at 7 p.m. And you'll have 10 minutes, I believe, to write it. Maybe 15, but it's, let's say 10, and that way the extra time will be kind of a bonus. So you've got your destination quiz next Wednesday, and then we'll have class after that. And then what we're studying will be on your learning plan. Okay, now I'm just going to open quickly Canvas and show you the map work. Destination Americas is us. Modules. And when I say you should be doing everything, I mean, here we go, click, click, now you can see everything. Each of these things. So if you didn't come to class, you'll watch the recording. Then what to do? Each of these things is very important. They will help you in your tests and in your quizzes. So we'll go just to map work. You can do the rest on your own, maybe today after class, because we're ending about 30 minutes early. So here you have your map. Can I zoom out? Yes, I can. Okay, that makes it easier. So here you have your map. You've got numbers and letters and some pictures too. So 1, 2, 3, those are clearly the states. And then you have letters that show you different landforms. So I know it's difficult because it doesn't give you the correct answers, but this map is actually more straightforward than some of the other ones you'll see. So on the map, number 1 is you would type Maine, and then you check it, and you're right. Now, that's maybe not the best example. Let's go to last week and see the map work, only because that's where the question came from. So now we're going back to Canada, I believe. Okay, also that is the same idea. So on your tests, you will see something like this. You'll have the exact same map, first of all. That map will be on your module test. But the question might say, on the map, A shows what landform? And then you'll see maybe Cape Cod, White Mountains, Green Mountains, Acadia National Park, for example. So then you need to remember what one is A. Or it might say on the map, number 4 is home to the most populated city in New England. True or false? So then you need to think, what is the most populated city in New England? Oh, it's Boston. Okay, Boston is in Massachusetts. Is number 4 Massachusetts? So you need to remember the information from class, but you also need to know how to put that information and connect it with the map. So completing these exercises will help, like the map work, for example, and the activities. So week 5 activity, this one is just you, let me zoom back in for you, easier to see. You drag and drop. So what is made up of 6 states? You choose from over here. That would be New England. Up. This one is larger than the other 5 combined. That's Maine. Okay, and then you go through and check it. If you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, it will tell you. And so those are the types of activities. And they're not worth marks. I won't know if you've done them or not, but they will help you with your tests.